At the northern edge of Europe lies a country shaped by water, ice, mountains, and the sea. A land where enormous cliffs rise almost vertically from deep blue fjords, where waterfalls fall from high mountain plateaus, where tiny villages sit beneath mountains that seem almost too large for the people living below them. This is Norway. Today, Norway is peaceful, modern, and highly connected. But more than 1,000 years ago, these shores belonged to a very different world. From settlements scattered across this rugged coastline, Scandinavian sailors built extraordinary wooden ships and pushed out into seas that many others feared to cross. Some searched for new land, some searched for trade, and others came as raiders. History would remember many of them as Vikings, but the real Viking world was far more complicated than the image of warriors we often see in movies. Most people living here were farmers, fishermen, craftspeople, traders, parents, and children. Only some took part in the distant expeditions that made the Vikings famous. And perhaps the landscape itself helps explain why those voyages became possible. Because when you stand beside a Norwegian fjord, with enormous mountains blocking the land and the open sea stretching toward the horizon, you begin to understand why boats became so important. This is a journey through Norway, through the homeland of Viking kings, across some of Europe's most dramatic landscapes, into remote fishing villages above the Arctic Circle, and finally beneath a night sky illuminated by one of nature's most extraordinary displays. Welcome to Norway, the land of fjords, the land of the north, and one of the great homelands of the Viking Age. Norway occupies the western and northern part of the Scandinavian peninsula. Sweden stretches along much of its eastern border, while Norway's long western coastline faces the North Atlantic and Norwegian seas. Its capital, Oslo, is a modern city of glass buildings, waterfront neighborhoods, museums, trains, and busy streets. But looking only at Oslo gives you a very incomplete picture of Norway. This is a long, mountainous country. Much of its land is covered by mountains, forests, valleys, lakes, and enormous open spaces. Only a relatively small amount of land is suitable for farming. And then there is the coastline. It twists around countless islands, peninsulas, bays, and narrow fjords. For centuries, communities living here depended on boats. The sea was not simply something separating them from the rest of the world. In many cases, the sea was the road connecting them to it. And that relationship between people and water became one of the defining features of Norway's history. To understand Norway, you first have to understand its fjords. Imagine enormous valleys carved through mountains by ancient glaciers. As the climate changed and the ice slowly retreated, seawater filled many of these deep valleys. The result was the landscape Norway is famous for today. Long arms of ocean reaching deep into the mountains, dark blue water surrounded by cliffs, waterfalls descending from high plateaus, small farms appearing on patches of green land, and tiny boats almost disappearing beneath the enormous scale of the mountains around them. Among the most famous are Geirangerfjord and Nærøyfjord. These landscapes look almost unreal from above. But the fjords were never simply beautiful. They shaped everyday life. Crossing steep mountain terrain could be difficult and slow. Travel by water could be much easier. Boats connected farms, villages, fishing communities, and trading centers. And over generations, people living along this coast became highly skilled at building vessels and navigating dangerous waters. That maritime knowledge would eventually help carry Scandinavian sailors far beyond Norway. Historians generally place the Viking Age between roughly the years 800 and 1050. But one important misunderstanding needs to disappear immediately. Not everyone living in Norway during this period was a Viking. Today, the word is often used for almost every Scandinavian person from the period. But in reality, Viking life was much broader than raiding and warfare. Back home, daily life continued. People farmed, Animals had to be cared for, wood had to be collected, food had to be prepared and preserved. Fishing remained essential. Clothing had to be made, tools had to be repaired, homes had to be maintained, and communities had to survive long northern winters. A Viking Age settlement was not simply a military camp, it was home. Inside longhouses, families gathered around fires. Outside, animals, fields, boats, and workshops supported everyday life. Craftsmanship mattered enormously. Woodworking, metalworking, weaving, leatherwork, and shipbuilding all played important roles. And perhaps no object represents their skill better than the ship. The Viking ship was one of the most important technologies of its time. It was designed for movement. A large sail could carry the vessel over long distances when the wind was favorable. Rows of oars gave sailors additional control, and the hull allowed many vessels to move through both open sea and relatively shallow water. For people living along Norway's complicated coastline, this was incredibly valuable. Some voyages remained close to home, others went much farther. Scandinavian sailors traveled across the North Sea. They reached the British Isles. They traveled along the coast of continental Europe. Some moved west toward Iceland and Greenland. Trade routes also connected Scandinavian communities with distant parts of Europe and beyond. Imagine doing this more than 1,000 years ago. No engine, no satellite navigation, no weather app, no modern map. Only wood, rope, cloth, experience, stars, coastline, wind, and the sea. Every journey depended on skill. Every storm could become dangerous. Every unfamiliar coastline brought uncertainty. And yet these sailors continued traveling farther. Norway still holds remarkable evidence of that maritime world. One of the country's most famous archaeological discoveries is the Oseberg ship. It was found inside a burial mound near Tonsberg in the early 20th century. The ship revealed extraordinary craftsmanship and provided historians with valuable clues about Viking Age society. And discoveries like this help us see something movies often forget. The Viking world was not only about fighting, it was also about engineering, craftsmanship, navigation, trade, community, and adaptation. Away from famous voyages, most days were about something much simpler: survival. The seasons controlled life. Summer meant preparation. Winter meant depending on what had already been grown, caught, produced, and stored. Families needed food. They needed heat. They needed shelter. Farmers raised animals and cultivated whatever the local environment allowed. Fishing was crucial along the coast. Craftspeople used the materials available around them, and houses were built for practicality rather than comfort as we understand it today. Imagine entering a longhouse on a winter evening. Outside, snow covers the ground. Cold wind moves across the valley. Inside, fire becomes the center of life. Food is being prepared. Tools are being repaired. Clothing is being made. Stories are being shared. Children learn by watching adults. There are no electric lights, no supermarkets, no instant communication, no heating system controlled by a button. Everything important depends on the people around you and the resources you managed to prepare before winter arrived. In northern Norway, the Lofoten Islands provide one of the most dramatic places to imagine this world. Sharp mountains rise straight from the ocean. Fishing villages sit between rock and water. The sea dominates everything. At Borg in Lofoten, archaeological discoveries revealed the remains of an important Viking Age settlement. Today, reconstructed buildings help visitors imagine what life might have looked like more than 1,000 years ago. Elsewhere in Norway, recreated Viking villages demonstrate traditional crafts, cooking, boat building, and other parts of daily life. Standing in these places, it becomes easier to imagine the world behind the legends. Not just kings, not just warriors, but families, farmers, fishermen, craftspeople. people trying to survive another season. The Viking world also had its own beliefs, symbols, and stories. Before Christianity became dominant in Norway, Norse mythology described a universe filled with gods, supernatural beings, and powerful forces of nature. Names such as Odin and Thor survived for centuries. Today they are known across the world through books, movies, games, and popular culture. But for people living in ancient Scandinavia, these were not entertainment characters. They belonged to a much larger belief system. Nature itself could feel mysterious and powerful. Storms, dark winters, thunder, the sea, mountains, fire, the changing sky. Another surviving connection to the past can be found in runes. Runes were part of an old writing system used across Scandinavia. Inscriptions have been found on stones, tools, jewelry, wooden objects, and monuments. These carvings make the Viking Age feel more human. Instead of imagining anonymous people from a distant time, sometimes we can see words they actually carved with their own hands. Messages left behind for people who would live centuries later. The Viking Age was also a period of political change. Different rulers and regional centers competed for influence. Over time, larger political structures developed. Norway slowly became a more unified kingdom. This process did not happen in a single day. It happened gradually. Power shifted, alliances changed, battles were fought. Christianity spread through the country, new institutions developed, and by the middle of the 11th century, historians usually consider the Viking Age to have ended. But Viking history never disappeared. It remained in archaeological sites, but modern Norway would become something those ancient communities could hardly have imagined. Travel from a reconstructed Viking settlement into Oslo today, and the contrast is extraordinary. Modern buildings rise beside the waterfront. Electric trains cross the city. Cars move through tunnels beneath mountains. Bridges connect communities once separated by water. Technology has transformed almost every part of life. Norway is known today for modern infrastructure, strong public services, and high living standards. But even in this modern country, geography refuses to disappear. Mountains still divide communities. Weather still affects travel. The ocean still provides livelihoods, and nature is never far away. From Oslo, forests and open landscapes are close. Move west and the terrain becomes increasingly dramatic. Move north, and eventually you enter another Norway entirely. Northern Norway, a place where mountains rise directly from the sea, where villages sit beneath enormous peaks, where winter darkness lasts for long periods, and where summer can bring extremely long days. Above the Arctic Circle, daylight behaves very differently from what people farther south are used to. In parts of northern Norway, the sun remains above the horizon for long stretches during summer. During winter, some areas experience periods when the sun does not rise above the horizon at all. For people who have never experienced this, it can feel almost impossible. But for communities here, it is part of the rhythm of life. Travel through Lofoten and the scenery becomes even more dramatic. Sharp mountains rise from cold blue water. White beaches appear beneath dark cliffs. Red fishing cabins line small harbors. Fishing boats move between islands. Snow covers the mountains in winter. The whole landscape feels like a meeting point between ocean and stone. Fishing has supported communities here for generations. Long after the Viking Age ended, northern Norway became famous for dried fish and other seafood products that were traded far beyond the region. The boats are different today. The houses are warmer. Navigation is digital. Communication is instant, but the relationship with the sea remains. People still live beside the same cold waters that shaped generations before them. Some of Norway's most photographed settlements are still working communities. Places like Rhine and Hamnøy appear almost unreal from the air. A cluster of red and white houses, a small harbor, dark blue water, and enormous mountains rising immediately behind everything. It is beautiful, but life here has always required adaptation. Weather can change quickly. Winter conditions can be difficult. Distances between communities can be large, and the sea can be both generous and dangerous. For generations, coastal families learned to read conditions carefully. They understood wind, currents, seasons, fish migration, and the risks of leaving shore. Again, it is easy to see how this environment helped produce skilled sailors. Modern Norway has changed almost beyond recognition, but the geography that shaped Viking society is still here. Norway's food traditions also reflect the land and sea. Along such a long coastline, seafood naturally became important. Fish could be eaten fresh, salted, dried, smoked, preserved for winter. Today, Norwegian food is much more diverse. Modern cities offer cuisine from around the world, but traditional ingredients and regional dishes remain part of the country's identity. Fish, bread, potatoes, dairy products, meat, berries, and foods shaped by local climate and geography. Food is one of the quietest ways history survives. Cities change, but people still gather around tables, just as families did here centuries ago. And then, when the conditions are right, northern Norway offers another experience entirely. Night falls, the sky becomes dark, stars appear above snowy mountains. At first, you may notice only a faint green glow. Then it begins to move. A thin line stretches across the sky. It grows brighter. The shape changes. Green light begins to dance above the mountains. The aurora borealis, the northern lights. Today, science explains this phenomenon through interactions between particles from the sun and Earth's magnetic environment. But imagine seeing this sky 1,000 years ago. No electric lights, no scientific explanation, no city glow. Only darkness, snow, mountains, ocean, and a sky filled with moving light. For people living in the distant past, it must have been unforgettable. This is where Norway becomes more than a historical story, because the landscape connects the present to the past. Movies often show the Viking world through battles, warriors, ships, and kings. Those things were part of the story. But travel through Norway, and another picture begins to appear. This landscape tells you about isolation, about difficult winters, about communities built between mountain and sea, about people depending on one another, about generations becoming skilled at fishing, farming, crafting, sailing, and surviving. The Viking Age lasted only a few centuries. Norway continued changing long after it ended. New beliefs arrived, kingdoms changed, cities grew. Technology transformed the coastline. Old wooden ships eventually gave way to modern vessels. Small settlements became towns. Roads, tunnels, airports, and trains connected places that once felt impossibly distant. The same mountains still rise above the fjords. The same Atlantic waves still reach the coast. The same northern winter still brings darkness. The same fishing grounds still lie beyond the shore. And on clear Arctic nights, the same green lights still move across the sky. Norway is no longer the world of the Vikings. It is a modern country living many centuries beyond the age of longships and Norse kings. But if you travel far enough into its fjords, stand beside an ancient coastline, walk through the remains of an old settlement, and watch a wooden ship move quietly across the water, for just a moment, the distance between the present and the past begins to disappear. You can almost imagine the sound of oars entering cold water. This is Norway, a country of towering mountains, deep fjords, frozen villages, Arctic seas, northern lights, and a history that once sent sailors across the known world. The land has changed, the people have changed, the ships have changed, but the mountains remain, the sea remains, and the story of the Vikings remains part of Norway forever. If you enjoyed this journey through Norway, subscribe and join us for the next documentary as we explore another extraordinary place, another culture, and another story hidden somewhere on our planet.